All right, get ready, because we are diving deep today into one of the most infamous events in American history.
Oh, yeah.
The JFK assassination.
Definitely.
We've got a whole stack of articles here, mainly from Kennedy Assassination Chronicles, and
Okay.
it seems like they're all about really poking holes in the official story.
Yeah, you're right.
No.
This publication is dedicated to digging deeper, questioning that Warren Commission report and exploring some alternative theories about what went down in Dallas that day.
Okay, so what are we looking at for this deep dive? Is it going to be a bunch of, crazy conspiracy theories, or is there some real substance here?
It's not about just like rehashing the usual suspects or anything like that.
Yeah.
These articles really seem to focus on specific details and evidence that
Okay.
often get overlooked. And I think they really want you, the listener, to rethink what you thought you knew.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin with something as massive as the JFK assassination?
Well, let's start with what might be the most controversial piece of the whole puzzle,
Okay.
the single bullet theory.
Right.
The Warren Commission claims that one bullet caused all the wounds to both President Kennedy and Governor Connolly. But a lot of people, including, the folks at Kennedy Assassination Chronicles, find that pretty hard to swallow.
Yeah, I remember learning about that in school. And even then,
Right.
it seemed a little far-fetched.
Yeah.
So how do these articles go about challenging that?
Well, they bring up a lot of interesting points.
Okay.
For example, they highlight how eyewitness accounts contradict the smooth motion of the limousine that's shown in the Zapruder film.
Right.
Multiple witnesses said the car swerved left and even came to a near stop, which doesn't match up with the film at all.
That's a good point.
Right.
If the film is supposed to be like the most reliable evidence and it doesn't even match what people actually saw,
Yeah.
you have to wonder
Yeah.
about its authenticity.
Exactly. And it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
The magazine digs into a theory called horizontal editing, which basically means somebody may have cut and pasted sections of the Zapruder film together to potentially remove something incriminating.
Wait, so they're suggesting that the film could have been tampered with?
It's definitely a possibility they explore.
That's kind of blowing my mind right now.
Yeah. And they also point out
Yeah.
specific anomalies in the film that have never been adequately explained.
Okay.
Like a mysterious white blob, a strange pink spray, and even the driver inexplicably turning his head around.
You know what's fascinating about that? It's like every little detail
Yeah.
that they bring up just
Yeah.
raises more questions.
Exactly.
Didn't that Roy Truly guy say something that contradicted the film too?
Yes, he was watching the motorcade from the Texas School Book Depository, and he testified that the driver almost had to stop the car completely. Again, totally different from that smooth ride that's depicted in the film.
Okay, so I've started to see how all these seemingly small inconsistencies
Add up to a much bigger problem with the single bullet theory.
Yeah.
What else did they dig up?
Well, they uncovered some strange stuff about the Zapruder film itself.
Right.
Apparently, the National Archives accidentally released a duplicate frame, which caused a ton of confusion for researchers who were studying the film.
So are they saying there are potentially errors or even deliberate manipulations within the official evidence?
Seems that way, and that's not even the craziest part.
Okay.
They also mentioned that a photo taken by a bystander named Ulchins
Okay.
shows a dark spot on the windshield
Okay.
that looks suspiciously like a bullet hole. But guess what?
What?
In later copies of the photo, that dark spot is gone.
Wow. That's pretty big detail to just vanish.
Right.
It really makes you wonder if someone was trying to control what people saw and believed.
You're picking up on a key theme here.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're looking at a puzzle where some of the pieces have been deliberately hidden or altered.
Right. But moving on, there's another article in the stack that takes a deep dive into the belongings of Jack Ruby,
Oh, yeah.
the man who shot Oswald.
That was a whole other layer of crazy in this story.
Oh, yeah.
I always wondered about Ruby's motives.
Yeah.
What did they find out about him?
Well, for starters, he was carrying over $2,000 in cash
Okay.
when he was arrested, which was a huge sum in 1963. Where
Yeah.
did that money come from?
Right.
What was he doing with it?
$2,000 in cash. That's not exactly pocket change. It definitely suggests he might have been involved in something shady.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the bizarre collection of stuff they found in his car.
Okay.
A dog muzzle,
What?
a twist waist exerciser, a record for figure control for women, and oddly, a pair of size 10.5 golf shoes.
Okay, wait a minute.
Way too big for
A
him.
dog muzzle?
Yeah.
What was he doing with all that random stuff? It's like a garage sale in his car?
Right.
It definitely paints a weird picture of the guy.
It's these little details that really make you question everything you know.
Right.
Was Ruby leading a double life? Was he involved in something bigger than we realize?
Yeah.
It's almost like the more we learn, the less we understand.
Okay, so we've got a potentially doctored film, mysterious cash, and a car full of weirdness. This is getting pretty wild.
Yeah.
What's next on this JFK roller coaster?
Well, let's shift gears for a minute.
Okay.
And talk about Jim Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney, who claimed he'd solved the JFK assassination.
Right.
He actually brought a case against a businessman named Clay Shaw, accusing him of being involved in the conspiracy.
I vaguely remember hearing about that.
Yeah.
Wasn't Garrison kind of a controversial figure?
Definitely. This article we have is written by a journalist who initially supported Garrison's investigation. But as he got closer to the case, he started having some serious doubts.
Okay, so what happened?
Yeah.
Why did he change his mind about Garrison?
Well, it seems that some of the witnesses relied on hypnosis to recall events.
Right.
Which is always a bit sketchy.
Yeah.
Others might have been making deals for lighter sentences in exchange for their testimony.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that definitely casts a shadow over the whole investigation.
It does.
If the witnesses aren't reliable, then the whole case falls apart.
Yeah. But Garrison was convinced he was right.
Really?
Absolutely. The journalist describes him as being passionately convinced of a cover-up.
Wow.
He even recounts a story where Garrison showed him the Zapruder film, convinced that it would prove a conspiracy once and for all.
It sounds like he was so caught up in his own theory
that
he might have missed some pretty big red flags.
It's kind of tragic in a way.
Yeah, it is.
But it's also a reminder that even the most well-intentioned investigations can be flawed.
Right.
Now, let's go back to that single bullet theory.
Okay.
Because there's more.
Okay.
This next section gets into the nitty-gritty details of the bullet's alleged trajectory, its velocity, and whether or not it could have fragmented.
Okay, so we're getting into the really technical stuff now.
It can be, but it's also where things get really interesting.
Okay.
We have Dr. Fackler, a ballistics expert whose findings seem to support the single bullet theory.
Okay.
And then John Nichols, who completely disagrees with him.
Okay.
And get this.
Yeah.
Expert opinions on this have actually changed and been revised over time.
Wait, so they're saying that the experts don't even agree on what happened?
Exactly.
That's a little unsettling.
Well, it highlights the complexity of this case. For example, there was a big deal made about the bullet found on a stretcher supposedly being pristine and not fragmented. That was seen as key evidence supporting the single bullet theory.
Right. I remember that seemed like a very crucial piece of the puzzle.
But later on, it turned out that the bullet was actually slightly deformed.
So they got a pretty crucial detail wrong.
It's one of many inconsistencies. There's also a huge debate about the bullet's velocity and force. Experts can't seem to agree on how much force would have been needed for the bullet to go through Kennedy's neck, Connolly's chest, wrist, and thigh.
So are you saying that the single bullet theory relies on some pretty shaky science?
Well, let's just say there's a lot of room for doubt.
Okay.
And get this.
Yeah.
There were these X-ray images that showed something near Kennedy's spine that everyone thought were metal fragments from the bullet.
Right.
Turns out they might have been something else entirely.
Hold on. They misidentified what was in the X-rays.
It is.
It's a pretty big mistake.
It underscores the fact that even with the best technology and the most experienced experts, there's always room for error.
Wow.
And there are even accusations that some experts, like a guy named Latimer, might have manipulated diagrams and findings to make the single bullet theory work.
So we're talking about possible tampering with evidence to make the official story work.
It's a serious accusation, and it underscores the need for transparency and rigorous scrutiny of the evidence, especially in a case as high profile as this.
Okay, my head is spinning a bit with all these conflicting details and potential cover-ups.
Yeah.
Can we take a step back from the technical stuff for a moment?
Sure.
And talk about how this history is being presented to the public?
That's a great transition. Let's talk about the 6th Floor Museum in Dallas.
Okay.
Have you ever been?
No, but I've always wanted to go.
Yeah.
It's in the former Texas School Book Depository, right?
Exactly.
The building where Oswald supposedly shot from.
It's a place where visitors can learn about the JFK assassination and grapple with all the unanswered questions.
Right.
They're actually expanding it, adding new exhibits, and even a research center.
That's great. It sounds like they're trying to offer a really comprehensive experience.
They are, but here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
The museum is also taking steps to control the narrative in Dealey Plaza itself.
Huh.
They're placing hosts around the area who can offer accurate information to counter the claims of conspiracy theorists.
Wow, that's a bold move.
It raises a big question.
Yeah.
How do you present a balanced perspective on something as controversial as the JFK assassination?
Right.
Do you try to shut down alternative theories? Or do you let visitors draw their own conclusions?
It's like walking a tightrope between presenting the facts and acknowledging that there are still so many unanswered questions.
It's a tough call.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready for the next twist in this story.
Okay.
What else do we have?
Well, buckle up, because this last article we're going to discuss takes things in a completely different direction.
Okay.
It's a journalist's account of a potential Cuban plot to assassinate JFK.
Whoa, hold on, a Cuban plot.
That's right.
So we're talking Fidel Castro.
That's right. This journalist believes that Castro, who is obviously not a fan of the U.S. trying to overthrow him, ordered Kennedy's assassination as payback. He claims he was silenced for decades because of national security concerns.
Okay.
But is finally ready to tell his story.
This is getting really intense.
Yeah.
What kind of evidence does he have to back up this claim?
His theory hinges on the idea that Castro deliberately flooded the U.S. with criminals in the years leading up to the assassination as a way to destabilize the country.
Wow.
Potentially creating the right conditions for Kennedy's assassination.
It's a pretty chilling thought.
Yeah, it adds a whole other layer of complexity to this whole thing.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he also offers some specific advice to investigators.
Okay.
He says they should contact Fidel Castro directly.
Seriously. Contact Castro.
Yeah, and ask him about what he knows.
That's a bold move, considering the history between the U.S. and Cuba.
It is, and he also suggests re-examining Governor Connolly's wounds for any bullet fragments.
Okay.
Believing this could provide crucial information about the bullet's trajectory.
Right.
And finally, debunk the single bullet theory.
So even with this Cuban plot theory, we're back to questioning the single bullet theory.
It really is the thread that connects all these different pieces of the puzzle.
It really is.
You know? The single bullet theory is the linchpin of the official narrative.
Yeah.
If you can cast doubt on that, then everything else starts to crumble.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. We've gone from a potentially doctored film to a car full of weirdness to a possible Cuban conspiracy.
Right.
This is more twists and turns than a Hitchcock movie.
And we're just getting started.
Oh, boy.
There's so much more to unpack in these articles, but for now, let's take a breather and let all this information sink in.
Yeah, I need a minute to process all this.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we think we know about history, but then you dig a little deeper and realize there's a whole other story hidden beneath the surface.
That's the beauty of a deep dive.
Yeah.
It's all about challenging assumptions and discovering those hidden truths.
I can't wait to see what else we uncover as we continue this journey into the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
Join us next time as we delve even deeper into the source material and explore even more thought-provoking details.
Absolutely.
All right, we're back and ready to dive even deeper into these JFK assassination articles.
Yeah.
Last time we left off with that journalist who thinks Fidel Castro was behind it all.
Right.
It's a pretty wild theory.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear more.
It is a bold claim.
Yeah.
And he doesn't hold back in his suggestions for how investigators should proceed.
Right.
He actually recommends reaching out directly to Fidel Castro.
Wait, seriously. Contact Castro himself?
Yeah.
That seems incredibly unlikely. Why would he cooperate after all these years?
He argues that with the Cold War long over, and with so much time having passed, Castro might be willing to shed some light on what he knew.
Oh, okay.
You know, maybe even see it as a way to set the record straight from his perspective.
I guess it's worth a shot, though.
Yeah.
I'm not getting my hopes up. But remember how he also mentioned re-examining Governor Connolly's wounds?
Yeah.
For bullet fragments?
Yeah.
What was the thinking there?
He believes that a fresh look at the physical evidence, especially with today's technology, might reveal something that was missed back then.
Okay.
He thinks those bullet fragments could provide definitive proof about the trajectory of the bullet, potentially debunking the single bullet theory once and for all.
It's amazing how much we still don't know about what happened that day.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden within the evidence.
Right.
Speaking of secrets, let's go back to that article about Jack Ruby's belongings.
Okay.
I'm stuck on that car full of weirdness.
Yeah, it's a real head-scratcher.
It is.
You have over $2,000 in cash, a dog muzzle exercise equipment, and those bizarrely large golf shoes,
Right.
all just sitting in his car.
It's like a snapshot into a mind.
Yeah.
You can't quite grasp. It's hard to imagine what connection those random items could have to the assassination.
Right.
But maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
The fact that he was carrying so much cash is particularly suspicious.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It begs the question, was that money somehow connected to the assassination?
Right.
Was he paid to do something? Or was he planning to disappear?
Right.
It's a mystery that's never been solved.
It's like every detail just deepens the enigma.
Definitely.
And don't forget, despite all the scrutiny, no direct link between Ruby and Oswald has ever been found.
It's baffling.
It really is.
That's the thing about this case. You think you're getting closer to the truth, but then another layer of mystery peels back.
Right.
And you realize you're even further down the rabbit hole.
Okay, so we've got a potentially doctored film, questionable ballistics,
Yeah.
a guy carrying wads of cash, and a car full of oddities.
Right?
And now a possible Cuban connection.
Yeah.
Where do we even go from here?
Well, let's revisit Jim Garrison and his case against Clayshaw for a moment.
Okay.
Remember, the journalist who wrote this article initially believed in Garrison's investigation,
I do.
but then he started having serious doubts.
Yeah. I remember what specifically made him change his mind.
He began to question the reliability of the witnesses.
Okay.
Some had relied on hypnosis to recall events.
Right.
And others might have been cutting deals for later sentences in exchange for testimony.
Yeah.
It definitely throws a wrench in the credibility of the whole thing.
If you can't trust the witnesses, then the entire case starts to crumble.
Exactly.
But wasn't Garrison absolutely convinced he was right about a conspiracy?
The journalist describes him as incredibly passionate and determined to expose what he believed was a massive cover-up.
It's almost as if he became so fixated on his theory that he might have overlooked some pretty obvious red flags.
It's kind of a cautionary tale, isn't it?
It is.
Even when you're pursuing the truth, you have to be willing to question everything.
Right. Even your own beliefs.
That's a really important point.
Now let's circle back to the single bullet theory.
Okay.
Because this next article really gets into the weeds of the science behind it.
Okay. Brace yourselves, folks. We're about to get technical.
Yeah.
What kind of details are we talking about?
This article dives into the specifics of the bullet's alleged trajectory, its velocity,
Okay.
and the debate over whether or not it fragmented
Okay.
as it passed through Kennedy and Connolly. There's a lot of back and forth between different experts,
Right.
each with their own interpretation of the evidence.
So are we talking about those disagreements between Dr. Fackler,
Exactly.
who seemed to support the single bullet theory,
Yeah.
and John Nichols, who challenged it?
Exactly. And what's even more fascinating is that expert opinions on this have shifted and been revised over time.
So you're saying that even the so-called experts can't agree on what happened.
Exactly.
That's a little unsettling.
Well, it highlights the complexity of this case.
For example, there was a lot of emphasis placed on the bullet, found on a stretcher being pristine and not fragmented.
Right.
It was seen as key evidence supporting the single bullet theory.
Right. I remember that it seems like a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, but it changed.
It did.
Later analysis showed that the bullet was actually slightly deformed.
Wow. So a key piece of evidence used to support the official story turns out to be inaccurate.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And then you have the debate about the bullet's velocity and force.
Right.
Different experts have presented conflicting findings about how much force would have been required for the bullet to go through both Kennedy and Connolly, hitting all the different body parts it allegedly did.
So the physics of the single bullet theory don't quite add up.
Let's just say there's a lot of room for skepticism.
Okay.
And remember those X-ray images that showed what everyone thought were metal fragments near Kennedy's spine?
Yes.
Well, it turns out those might not have been bullet fragments after all.
Wait, they misidentified something as crucial as bullet fragments in the X-rays.
It is.
It seems like a pretty big oversight.
It underscores the fact that even with the best technology and the most experienced experts,
Right.
there's always room for error.
Okay, so the evidence surrounding the single bullet theory
Yeah.
is far from conclusive.
Yeah.
What else do these articles dig up about the inconsistencies in the official story?
Well, there are some pretty disturbing allegations about certain experts potentially manipulating evidence
Okay.
to fit the single bullet narrative.
Wow.
The article specifically mentions a guy named Latimer,
Okay.
who allegedly cropped diagrams and distorted findings to support the theory.
So we're talking about possible tampering with evidence to make the official story work.
It's a serious accusation.
It is.
And it underscores the need for transparency and rigorous scrutiny of the evidence,
Right.
especially in a case as high profile as this.
Okay, my head is spinning a bit with all these conflicting details and potential cover-ups. Can we take a step back from the technical stuff for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
And talk about how this history is being presented to the public?
That's a great transition. Let's talk about the 6th Floor Museum in Dallas.
Okay. I've always been fascinated by that place.
Yeah.
It's literally in the building where the assassination took place.
Right.
It must be a pretty intense experience to visit.
It is. They've done a great job of creating a space where visitors can learn about the assassination and grapple with all the unanswered questions.
Right.
They're actually expanding the museum, adding new exhibits, and even a research center.
That's great. It sounds like they're committed to presenting a comprehensive and nuanced view of the event.
They are, but I remember you mentioned something about them trying to control the narrative in Dealey Plaza itself.
Right.
What was that about?
Yeah. How do they do that?
They've started placing hosts around the area who can provide what they call accurate information to counter the claims, often made by conspiracy theorists.
Wow. So they're kind of trying to manage the narrative in such a public and historically significant space.
It makes you wonder, though, where do you draw the line between providing accurate information and potentially stifling open discussion and debate?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance.
It is.
It really is.
And it speaks to the ongoing struggle over how we interpret and remember this event. On the one hand, you want to prevent the spread of misinformation and conspiracy theories.
Right.
But on the other, you don't want to shut down legitimate questions and alternative perspectives.
That's a tough one.
It is.
Okay, before we get too philosophical, let's get back to those articles. What's the next rabbit hole we're going down?
Well, remember that journalist who believes there was a Cuban plot to assassinate Kennedy?
Yes.
Let's revisit his story and see what else he has to say.
Okay, I'm all ears. This should be interesting. Okay, we are back for the final part of our deep dive into the JFK assassination. We've covered a lot of ground, from the single bullet theory to Jack Ruby's bizarre belongings to the possibility of a Cuban connection.
Yeah.
My mind is still reeling from all the twists and turns.
It has been a wild ride, hasn't it?
It really has.
And you're right, there's so much more to unpack in these articles. Remember that journalist who believes Fidel Castro was behind the assassination?
Yeah.
Let's revisit his story and see what else he has to say.
Okay, I'm ready. This is the part where we finally get some answers right.
Well, if this journalist is to be believed, Castro had a very specific motive for wanting Kennedy gone.
Okay.
He claims that Castro felt betrayed by Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Right.
And he saw Kennedy as a threat to his regime.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Castro was probably furious after the failed invasion.
Right.
But what evidence does this journalist have to support his theory?
He points to Castro's release of thousands of criminals from Cuban prisons into the United States in the years leading up to the assassination.
Right.
His theory is that Castro was deliberately trying to destabilize the U.S. and create chaos, potentially paving the way for Kennedy's assassination.
That's a pretty chilling thought.
It is.
Like he was trying to weaken the U.S. from within?
Yeah.
But did the journalist offer any suggestions for how investigators could get to the bottom of this?
He did. He actually recommends that investigators contact Fidel Castro directly.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Contact Castro.
And ask him about his knowledge of the assassination.
That seems incredibly unlikely, especially given the long and complicated history between the U.S. and Cuba.
It does seem like a long shot, but the journalist argues that with the Cold War over and with Castro now out of power, he might be more willing to talk.
Okay.
Maybe he'd see it as a chance to give his side of the story and set the record straight, at least from his perspective.
Like if stranger things have happened.
Right.
What else did the journalist suggest?
He also urges investigators to take another look at Governor Connolly's wounds. specifically to search for any remaining bullet fragments.
Mm-hmm.
He believes that with today's advanced technology,
Okay.
those fragments could provide definitive answers about the trajectory of the bullet
Right.
that allegedly passed through both Kennedy and Connolly.
So even with this Cuban plot theory,
Yeah.
we're still back to questioning the single bullet theory.
It seems like that one piece of evidence or lack thereof really holds the key to the whole mystery.
It really does.
It's the linchpin of the Warren Commission's entire narrative.
Right.
If you can cast doubt on the single bullet theory,
Yeah.
the whole official story starts to unravel.
You know, one thing that's been striking me throughout this whole deep dive is how many people are trying to control the narratives surrounding the assassination.
Right.
We have the Warren Commission pushing their official story.
Yeah.
Jim Garrison convinced he'd uncovered a massive conspiracy.
Right.
And even the Sixth Floor Museum taking steps to manage the narrative in Dealey Plaza.
You've hit on a really important point.
It seems like everyone has their own version of the truth,
Yeah.
their own interpretation of the events.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder who gets to decide what history we believe.
Exactly. It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of facts. It's also a story.
Right.
And those stories are often shaped by the people who tell them, their biases, their beliefs,
Right.
and even their agendas.
And in a case as complex and controversial as the JFK assassination,
Yeah.
those competing narratives make it even harder to discern what really happened.
It's almost as if the assassination itself became a blank canvas onto which everyone projected their own fears, beliefs, and suspicions.
That's a great way to put it, and it highlights the importance of critical thinking, of questioning everything, and of being wary of simple answers.
Especially when it comes to an event that continues to fascinate and haunt us decades later.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the JFK assassination, what's the biggest takeaway for you?
For me, it's the realization that the truth may be unknowable. We may never have definitive answers to all the questions surrounding this event.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we should stop searching, stop questioning, and stop exploring all the different possibilities.
I agree. The search for truth is as important as the truth itself.
Absolutely.
And in a case like this, the journey of discovery might be the most valuable part of the whole experience.
Exactly. It's about peeling back the layers, examining the evidence,
Right.
and challenging our own assumptions.
So to everyone listening out there, keep an open mind, keep digging, and keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah.
The JFK assassination may be a historical event, but its legacy lives on in the way we think about truth power and the search for answers.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover that missing piece of the puzzle that finally unlocks the truth.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking journey.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop searching for those hidden truths.